Well, welcome to ATGLive, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. I am one of your hosts, Pete Fletzer. And, I was going to say, as always, I'm joined by Nick Milkey, but I'm not tonight. It took two to replace Nick, but I can't think of two better people to bring in. I have Mr. Chris Ryons and Becca Benjamin. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Pete?
Here it is. I love it. What's up, brother?
Pete, I'm so tired.
You're tired?
In the best way possible.
Okay, in a good way. All right,
Yes.
That's good. That's good. I thought you were tired from the social media world, but
yes.
Yeah.
That too.
That too. Becca, how are
boy.
you? I haven't seen you, Becca, since Podathon.
Right. A lot has happened since then.
Yeah, we've seen a couple shows. We've one big show, one great show. And there's been a lot happening with that show, I think.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I'm happy. I know no one's here for the weather. But I'm trying not to melt. I mean, right now where I live, I'm right on the outside of Buffalo. They were saying on the news that we're actually hotter than Arizona.
Wow.
And Phoenix and all that. Like that's crazy. Oh, and Florida.
But it's funny you say that, because I was thinking today while I was sitting in the pool melting, because we're this whole East Coast.
Melt in the pool.
Well, it was that hot, but it's this whole East Coast right now is under this ridiculous heat wave. And I think, Becca, last time you were on the screen with us to talk, not during Podathon, but I think you were like at negative 20 degrees or something up in Buffalo.
Right?
So
right.
We're getting the extremes here for sure.
Yeah.
It's like four hells outside.
It is. It's hell outside.
We're really in hells. Yeah. There you go. How's that?
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like just a couple weeks ago, I was standing literally in the hail and snow at my daughter's lacrosse game in April, and now it's like, I'm literally able to cook outside on the sidewalk. It's crazy. It's crazy, but not as crazy as the world we've been seeing in Star Wars. One of the things we'd like to do every single week here on ATGLive is we'll talk about Star Wars news. We'll take deep dives, and normally we have guests, but right now our guests are here. You guys are already like right there on the show, and it's so great to have you guys here. Chris, I'm going to try to download that video in a little bit, but Chris, you've had some exciting news in what you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about Broaxium.
Well, Broaxium, we are taking our the next step into a larger world, so to speak. And after 20 years of working with Atomic City Comics in Philadelphia, I have left that job to start my own business. So I'm doing a collectible store. It's called Broaxium Outpost. There'll be a lot of toys, collectibles, comics. Limited on comics at the moment because things are still I'm still building up everything right now. But
it's okay. Nobody reads comics, Chris. It's fine. Nobody reads comics.
I know you don't. This guy. No, but yeah. So it's going to be an online store to start out. Mm-hmm. I'll be doing vendor booths at different conventions in the coming months and years to come, and hopefully within like another a year or so, I can get myself a brick and mortar. For the spot, because I got a bunch of ideas that I want to do for this thing, but so that's our next step is we're doing this store selling everything, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, Turtles, and anything, but mostly Star Wars stuff. Mostly it's mostly going to be Star Wars.
Well, this is like the best good news, bad news stories I've ever gotten, because I'm so excited for you and happy that you're finally getting this off the ground. I know this has been a dream of yours for a while, but now I have a direct connection. It's like I'm trying to get off of heroin, and then my best friend becomes a dealer.
Yes.
It's not good, man. It's not good for me. I mean, it's good for you, but it's not good for me. So
don't worry. Hey, just get a little bit here and there. You'll be all right.
You're gonna be fine. Well, if you're hanging out with us, on Thursday nights we do this little thing called ATGLive, where, as I said, we give you the news, we give you some updates, we watch your comments in the chat the whole night, and we'll be popping those up during the show. We are going to get to Acolyte. There has been a ton going on with Acolyte. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the elephant in the room. We will mention it, but I really want to dig in with these two guys about the stories and things going on. But before we get to that, I think we have a little bit of news that we want to chat about. So, Lloyd, hit that bumper, brother. Well, the first news story I want to talk about is Bryce Dallas Howard has been out there talking a little bit about Skeleton Crew. And of course, you can't talk Skeleton Crew. Well, you can't talk Bryce Dallas Howard without talking about her amazing work that she's done on Mando, that she's done on. So did she do an episode of Ahsoka? I can't recall, to be honest with you. I don't know if she did.
Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett she did. Yes, that's right. That's right. But so she has been out there talking, and she talked a lot about how she saw Jon Favreau having a very large presence on the set of Skeleton Crew, even though it's not his show, sort of implying that Skeleton Crew is going to be very tightly related to the Mandoverse, because that's Favreau's Star Wars. That's his world right now. She talked a lot about the interconnected storytelling. And I think that's, when we get to the Acolyte discussion, I think that's a key thing as well. But it's really interesting to see the way Star Wars is taking these series and doing things to make sure that there's direct lines and connectivity. And we'll talk a little bit more about some more Favreau conversation and Filoni conversation in just a minute. But the big story that came out of it was she expressed an interest to direct a Star Wars film in the future. She loves the collaborative nature of working on Disney Plus series, where she says that she really likes being in a position to be bringing someone else's story to life. I'm going to throw it to Becca first. Would you like to see Bryce do a major motion picture for Star Wars?
Not at all. Of course. Come on. What kind of question is that?
What kind of story
right there?
What kind of story would you like to see from her, do you think?
Whatever she'd like to tell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm coming of an age now where, I just want to enjoy it. I don't want to, be married to any expectations. I don't want to go in with high hopes of something specific and then, turn into what we see that's all over the internet, because that's just not how I roll, man.
Right. Yeah.
I like Star Wars. I don't really care what I'm getting. Animation, live action, a movie, a book. I love books. We all know that. Yeah. Comics, whatever, what have you. I mean, I even watched the campaigns for the gaming. I don't game. I'm not,
you go to YouTube and you watch the cutscenes.
Right. I just want the story. So whatever, that's the thing. These people this is what they do. They went to school for this. They're educated in this. This is what they do. So if they feel very passionate about a certain story that they want to tell, then they should tell it. Yeah. It doesn't matter what I think, what you think, what Chris thinks. It's their story. Let them tell the story. I'm in it. I'm ready.
100%. Chris, what are your thoughts on Bryce taking the helm on something like this?
Pete, we every time you ask me one of these things, what do I say?
Hashtag gimme.
Gimme. Just throw it in my face and let me enjoy it so very much. Yeah, absolutely. She did a great job with the project she's done with Star Wars already. Yeah, if she wants to do a movie, give her a movie. Oh my God, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I would love to see her be able to work. One of the comments that I've been making lately, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about it more during the Acolyte, is the Star Wars series, as great as they all are, and I really enjoy a lot of the vast majority of what we're getting. It still does feel like a television show in some regards, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that. But let's let Bryce Dallas Howard, a Hollywood movie star in her own right, with amazing director chops, let's let her throw together an entire film, giving her the full budget and the whole Monty on that. I would love to see that. So,
I mean, her dad did one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time.
Yeah. Yes. And did you see the tweet? Did you see the tweet today? There was somebody I think it might have been Variety or something, that said that they posted something about, will Bryce Dallas Howard do a Star Wars film? And Ron Howard retweeted it with the post, will she do a Star Wars film? I think it's going to happen. It's got to happen. I would love to see it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, let's hit another story here. We've recently the Ahsoka series has been back in the news a little bit because they're pushing for the Emmy campaign. Disney Plus and Lucasfilm are heavily promoting it. They're trying to get some Emmy awards for it. Rosario Dawson and Dave Filoni and Hayden Christensen were on an interview with Happy Sad Confused podcast, and they talked a little bit about the insights on creating Ahsoka, which I think as we look back, Ahsoka was one of these series that was really kind of seeing our favorite animated Star Wars be brought to the masses, because no matter how much the three of us on this screen and many of us listening and watching love animation, the reality is, unfortunately, it doesn't hit everybody. But to see those kind of stories come to life. But what was really interesting to me was Filoni talked a lot about his respect for Lucas's work and how he involves and collaborates with George still to this day. And I think there's a lot of conversation about this is not George Lucas Star Wars. And of course it's not. He sold it. He got a small check for $4.05 billion. He gave it up. I think he'll be fine. But the fact that Dave is still working with him, and he made one really interesting point. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, guys. Is he said things like using recurring lines of dialogue, like "May the Force be with you," need to have value. They can't just be catchphrases. Yes. Becca, where have you seen some of Dave's sort of direct connection to George, and do you feel, I mean, obviously we believe he's bringing the legacy, he's bringing it, he's doing that, but where are some of these places where you feel like that could have been a George thing?
You know what, I'm just gonna go right there. I think anything Mortis related that he put into Ahsoka, absolutely 100%. Believe me or not, I really don't care, but I'm not going to say where I heard it from. I do know that George did say he absolutely loved Hayden's performance in Ahsoka. So you got that going. I think that entire Clone Wars clip in World Between Worlds is definitely George influenced 100%. You know, George really loved Hayden, you know, and what Hayden brought to that character. And I think Hayden really went to bat for George in this, because he's come out several times. I think like 2006, even I think there was an article probably in the Star Wars Insider magazine where, you know, he didn't care what anyone thought of what he did. As long as George was happy with what he did for Anakin, that's all that mattered to him. And I think he still goes with that. You know, if this is what Dave wanted, he's going to do it. And I would just say what he brought forth with Clone Wars in the Ahsoka series, and of course Mortis. I think
you know, I think you're right. And I think what struck me about Hayden in Ahsoka was it wasn't Hayden Christensen from the prequels. It was Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars animated series, which was wild to me. Yeah, he embodied that. What about you, Chris? What are your thoughts on any of this?
Well, as far as look, the one thing with storytelling is that it has to evolve over the years, and Dave Filoni is standing on the shoulders of George Lucas and what he's done, that foundation that he built. I know that people get upset because, you know, things aren't like the way they were in the original trilogy. I'm like, well, things evolve. Things you have to move with the times, and storytelling evolves, and storytelling types evolve, all that kind of stuff. So I don't get that hatred, but yeah, I love what he's done with it, and I love where it's going. I love that we're getting deeper dives into things that we may have glossed over in the first 6 movies. So I'm loving it.
I couldn't agree more. And I love that George is still involved. And let's face it, you know, a lot of people, some of the really ridiculous things we're seeing on social media, but sell it back to George. Look, no offense to George. He's 80 years old.
He don't want that.
He doesn't. A, he doesn't want it. B, frankly, we don't want it. I mean, I love George. I do. But he's doing what George is doing the best he can for the best thing he possibly can for Star Wars right now is being involved, being there, giving his sort of, you know, I don't want to say blessing because that's not what it is, but giving his, that seems like something I might do. So
do you think he wants to deal With this fandom
No,
in this
that's
day
why
and
he
age,
gave it
Why do
away.
you think he sold it?
yeah,
That's right.
yeah, he was like,
done.
screw that. Yeah, and this is what? How many years ago was that? 16, 15? 16?
It's coming up on like 12, 14. Well, my son is going to be
No,
12, so it's like 12 years, right? 13
yeah,
years?
So
over a
yeah, you're right.
decade
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, and he was done with it then. The fandom has
Mhm.
gotten so much worse. Why would you want him? Why would he come back?
As long as he hasn't burned through that $4 billion, we'll be just fine.
Oh,
So
he's fine.
he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So
George Time.
I'm going to try something new this week because I want to do one last news story with a conversation that was recently had on SiriusXM with Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, where she just kind of, as part of a much larger conversation, she did talk a little bit about the upcoming movie with Ray that she's involved in, and so or not involved in. That makes it sound like she's just sort of like walking by in the hallways, but she's she's writing, directing, and putting together. So I'm gonna try this. This could fail miserably, but we're gonna give it a go. Let's try this, and I want to watch what she has here to say, and then let's talk a little bit about what she says here.
Sometimes you walk in the footsteps of people and giants who've created worlds.
Audio
And
is working,
in
right?
the case of Star Wars, George Lucas's world and the filmmakers that have walked in his footsteps have set this world that they want young viewers to sort of walk into and have an understanding of the world. And at the heart of it, for me, is Rey Skywalker, is Daisy Ridley and her story, and taking her on an adventure to a Jedi Academy and sort of creating a world that is a natural dovetail to the story that we've seen her go through the last 3 episodes, and working with Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and the team over there in breathing life to characters that everyone loves and has fallen in love with, and finding new characters that the next generation of moviegoers will fall in love with. I've had conversations with J.J. Abrams. I've had conversations with George Lucas, and then of course Dave Filoni, who's a big part of the Star Wars universe now. We speak very often, and Kathy Kennedy and Carrie Beck and Simon Emanuel. I mean, I think the team is really taking time to make sure that we do justice to telling the story of Daisy, and you know, I think that she stands for something. We've seen this wonderful journey she went on in episode 7, 8, and 9, and now it's like on to the next adventure. And how do we create a world and the adventure that we take her on?
I love
Squarespace's creative.
Yeah, whatever. I love everything about what she says there. And it's funny, when I found this clip, it was shortened, and they left out, to me, what the most important part of that was where she talks briefly about finding more characters, finding new characters to help tell that story. Becca, how did that video make you feel?
Made me feel good.
Yeah.
I love the fact that she points out that, Ray stands for something. Of course she does. I mean, I can only tell you from my own personal viewpoint. I can't speak for others, but I can tell you the trailers for Force Awakens were amazing. Yes, 100%. We were getting a new film. We were getting a whole new trilogy. Yay, yay, yay. But when I sat, I'm sorry, yay, yay, yay. But when I sit down in that seat in that crowded theater and it starts, and then you get that face that pops up on the screen that's all covered with the goggles, and know it's her. I had tears.
Yeah.
I had literal tears, because I can only tell you how I feel. When I was a little girl, and Star Wars came out, it was something that my parents brought all of us to see with my cousins and my grandparents, but it was mainly for my brother. Okay. Whatever. And when he would allow me on a good day to play with his Star Wars figures with him, he would hand me the Leia. Here you go. But I don't want to be Leia. I want to be Darth Vader. No, you're a girl. Here you go. I had one character that he let me play with. That is a very disheartening thing as a kid growing up, that, so of course, when he was not around, I would take what I want, hide him in my room, whatever. I paid for it later, but I'm just saying, I can only just try and fathom what other people that, were feeling when they had only maybe one or not any that would represent them.
Yep.
So seeing Daisy, it was like that whole feeling of hearing my cousins tell me, well, you can't be a Jedi in the woods with us because you're a girl.
Right. Yep.
So that was all that coming to me, and this flood of tears, and here she was, flesh and blood on screen, larger than life. Bring right back. I'm good with it. She's going to be in charge of this new Jedi Academy. A girl. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm just excited.
Well, okay, so I'm going to continue that line of thinking, and I know we're at the end of the normal time for this, but I want to continue this just a little bit, because Chris, we want to see Finn as a Jedi too, right?
I don't need to see Finn as a Jedi, but
well, you want to see him as a prominent Force user.
Yeah, I just want to see Finn as a prominent character, prominent, strong character who's not treated as Rey. Yes, who's not treated as comic relief or neutered in any way because they want to keep some shine on some of the other characters and whatnot. Like like I said, I was sold like something false when it came to Force Awakens, when it came to the Finn character. And just like Becca, I've said this 1,000 times, when it came to me playing with my Star Wars figures, at one point, I think after Return of the Jedi, I had 2 Lando figures, the Bespin, no, 3, the Bespin disguise. I'm sorry, the Skiff Guard disguise, the General Lando, and then the Cloud City Lando. Yep. So I had those 3, and that's all I had to work with as far as trying to have more black people and whatnot, with characters. And then I got a special kind of emotional when this one pick from episode 9 came out, and it was just Jannah and Finn, and I was like, that people don't get it. Like, that is special because that is the first time.
Yeah.
There are 2 black people prominent and and they are the focal point. It was that was like that hit me so hard. Like, I just thought that was great. So yeah, I'm really excited for this Rey movie. I hope that God, I hope Finn is in it. And I hope that he is not, this bumbling fool or coward and whatnot that they try to saddle him with, all throughout the trilogy and the Lego shorts and all that kind of stuff. That's I hope that that's the case. But the one thing is, while that writer director was talking, while I was happy that this is coming, I'm happy with an asterisk because you just that part of the fandom. It's just
keep that thought, because I want to talk about that when we get to probably the second half of our Acolyte discussion, because I want to talk about where Star Wars goes. We don't talk a lot about where it goes. We talk about where we are. I want to talk about the Acolyte. So we're going to take a break in just a moment. When we do, when we come back, I want us to talk about what we saw in episode 4 of the Acolyte. I want to get your thoughts on where we are with the Acolyte halfway through the season. And the end. Let's talk a little bit about where we go from here. So we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to take a deep dive into the Acolyte, but we'll be back in just a moment with more ATG Live. Well, we are back with ATG Live, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. Thank you so much for joining us. We see Twitter once again is taking off for us. We have a ton of people watching on Twitter. So thank you so much for joining us there. If you want to get us your comments, I think you have to go to YouTube. Unfortunately, I don't know how to see your comments on Twitter. We've tried. We're trying to figure that out. So if you're watching here, you want to get in the conversation, just head on over to youtube.com/ATG at the SSW Network, and you can get into the chat here and hang out with us. I am so thrilled to be joined by Chris Ryons from Broaxium, Becca Benjamin from Tarkin's Top Shelf. I did not gush enough about either one of them before we started. On Sunday nights, Broaxium has a live show where they don't just talk about Star Wars. They're talking about all the pop culture stuff of the week. I know you guys are big into House of the Dragon right now, which is exciting for me because so am I, which means that I don't watch you live because I'm watching House of the Dragon. But you guys, your Fallout discussions were amazing. I loved it. So great show there. And of course, Becca Benjamin and her partner, Mark Suter. Man, I was thinking Matt Suter, and I was like, it's not Matt, it's Mark Suter on Tarkin's Top Shelf. If you love Star Wars books, if you're interested in Star Wars books, and Becca, you've heard me tell you this before, I've listened to your spoiler reviews because I don't read as many books as I'd like, but I like to know what's going on, and your perspectives are awesome. So yes, and that's why I listen to Chris Ryons and his comic book stuff, because I don't get into that as much as I would like. But at all. Okay, at all. Yes, at all. It's true. At all. But Tarkin's Top Shelf is a must listen to. Great interviews with authors, and just sometimes just great discussions about the Star Wars books. And I'm so happy to call these guys friends and people who are part of this Star Wars community. So, but we want to take a deep dive into a little show called The Acolyte, which is at the halfway point. So, Lloyd, let's hit the bumper and let's talk deep dive on Acolyte. I see Chris laughing.
Sorry.
It is funny. Last week, Darth Chaco said, you didn't have to go so hard with the music. we're all like playing a little air bass, and it's a fun little ditty there. Yeah. But so guys, a show called The Acolyte, which takes place about 100 years, roughly, plus or minus. I think, Becca, you and I went back and forth on Twitter. It's about 87 years, probably, before the Phantom Menace, plus or minus, which is only important if you're counting Ki-Adi-Mundi's age, apparently. Don't
go there, man.
But it's a really interesting Star Wars show that I hope people watch. We are at a point right now where we're only halfway through, but at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, we're already halfway through. Let me start with Chris. Chris, how is this show striking you? And what are your thoughts on the show at this point? You and I got to go see the first 2 episodes together in Philly. What are your thoughts?
You've met honest, me, right, Pete?
Yeah, I know you love it, but
okay.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah,
thanks.
See you guys later. I absolutely love it. I'm the kind of fan where I don't have a checklist of things that I need, like action, this and that. May the force be with you. I got a bad feeling about this. Like, I don't need it. Like, I just want Star Wars. Just give me Star Wars. Yeah. This is really good Star. I'm sorry, all these hating fans out there. This is really good Star Wars.
Yeah,
it's in the universe. You're learning more about what happened, with the Jedi, like why the Jedi are the way they are. You learn, the inner workings a bit. You're seeing different parts of the galaxy. We're seeing different different sects where they have their own interpretations of what the Force is. That's so cool. And this is why, for me, as a person like Becca, who reads the books, who reads the comics, none of this stuff is weird to me. That as far as what we're seeing and all that kind of stuff, none of it's that isn't Star Wars. No, it very much is Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the great things about it is that I think it's
I don't know why I was so angry. I apologize.
You're passionate. You're not
passionate,
angry.
Exactly. But I think it's a great starting point for somebody who has never really watched the Star Wars. What's your thought, Becca?
You are absolutely right. And I've said this many times. If I said it once, I've said it a million times. The High Republic in general is such a fresh canvas to tell all these new stories that have nothing to do with the Skywalkers. We're starting off clean. And that doesn't mean that there's not little nuggets of connections. I'm just saying it's a fresh canvas. And this is how the Acolyte is. It's 100 years, like we said, give or take, blah, 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 before we know anything in the Phantom Menace. that's a beautiful thing, because you don't need to specifically know anything. Like, my husband is not a Star Wars fan. He will watch some of it. He's seen the films. He's watched this so far. He waits for every 2 episodes to drop, and then he'll watch them with me. And he actually likes it. And that's a big thing, because, he doesn't do Star Wars. So, so he's liking it. But that being said, I immediately thought of you, Chris, in the premiere episodes with the Broaxium. I'm like, oh, Chris, he's got to be just screaming.
Well, like Pete, I was the only one in the theater, like, woo, woo, woo. Like, when it was the Broaxium.
I was sitting next to Chris. I was sitting. I swear to God, Chris leans over to me. He's like, "You don't know why I made that noise right there." That was great.
Oh man. So stuff like that, that tells me something. That tells me that they're doing the research. They're not just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Though they are, but there's a madness to it. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason to the madness. So I'm enjoying this for the fact that it is fresh. It is something new. But I really think, and this is what's important, is you really need to remember what Leslie's telling here. She wanted to tell us a story of the underdog versus the institution. You have to realize that this is a different viewpoint. Like, for example, book lovers out there, you've read Lost Stars. You loved it. It was a different perspective of the original trilogy. You got to see fresh eyes and what they thought of it. That's what this is. We, excuse me, we're going to see exactly why in The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, why they fell so far, the Jedi. We're going to see all those cracks, all those splinters, what's actually happening. So when you go back and you watch it, you'll be like, oh, okay. There's that one. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and that's why I think people need to be patient with this show, because this is, it's interesting, because I think I say this all the time, and I swear there's a book in here somewhere I'll write one day about. In 1977, it was really easy to have good guys and bad guys. The world was different. The world was looked at differently, right? When you get to Andor, you get to Rogue One, it's really interesting, because for the first time we see that the rebels, sometimes they have to be terrorists. Sometimes they have. So the reason I talk about that as it relates to this show is we were sold by Obi-Wan Kenobi on this concept of the Jedi are the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. One guy's point of view, who, by the way, has been known to fudge things just a little bit to make it make sense for what he needs. Yoda, who's like, I don't really want to tell you all the truth just yet. So it was a perspective. And George himself, when you look back at the prequels, was showing that the hubris is what brought them down. And this is a really interesting time, because as Leslie said, as Dave Filoni said, as all the Lucasfilm spokespeople said, this is the beginning of the end of the High Republic. Which, why does this happen, right? Because the High Republic series that we've gotten so far, most of it is sort of by the book. I know obviously I haven't read all the stuff or read any of it, but from what I understand, it's a different type of Jedi, right? This is kind of, I mean, we saw it in the very first episode. I don't know anything about Vanessa Rowe, but I did immediately think, what is she hiding? What is she worried about? Why is she so concerned about what other people think about the Jedi? And that tipped me right off.
And the other thing about that is like a layer that some people won't get, that if they don't read any of the High Republic stuff, is it's sort of like, I'm like, man, what happened to her?
Right.
Like this is like the youngest Jedi Knight or youngest Jedi Master. And we saw her like in her younger days and things are like much different. Like what happened over the years to get her to this point? Because she is pretty much at like the Phantom Menace stage of the way the Jedi were. So like there's so many things that people who I hate to talk about these fans, but only like on the surface that they're not getting, but because they're not looking deeper, and
they're impatient. I think that's the
Yes,
biggest thing
that's
to
the
me
other
is
thing.
it's
Absolutely.
impatience. It's and maybe we'll go down here a little bit at this point. There was such a desire to beat this show up before it got out the door. Right. We saw that the review bombing started before the first episode dropped. There was a campaign prepared for this. The fact that people are gloating about the audience score being 14%, which, by the way, completely negates any value to Rotten Tomatoes, which we knew anyway.
Yeah.
But the point here being, these people are looking for something to dislike. When Leslie Headland told us about this story a year ago, the last time all of us were on the screen with Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, right? All of us together. We got the word from Leslie Headland and from Star Wars Celebration London that this is going to be a layer by layer show.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go week to week, and you're going to get a little bit more. And it's really amazing to me how these first 4 episodes, you're like, oh, I know how this. Oh, okay, it ended.
No,
but
you don't.
it's still going. It ended. Oh, but I wasn't expecting that. And if you watch Russian Doll, you know this is the way she tells stories.
Right.
Patience is important. I think episode 8 is going to end with a banger. I don't know what it's going to be, but
I don't know.
Don't worry, there's a season 2.
Yeah.
there's this wrestler from the 80s named Rowdy Piper, and one of his sayings is, and this is the way I felt like after the first couple episodes, or first 3 episodes, I'll say, is just when you think you have all the answers, I change the question. And that is the way I feel about this show, because myself and Mark Perez from Broaxium, we both are like, it's Indara. Like that's the dark sider that's there. And I don't think it's a Sith, but that we're thinking that other people are thinking it's Chimere. And I think that's Chimere. That's too easy. That's way too easy for it to be him, I think.
I've got thoughts.
So I'm cool if it's Indara. I'm cool whoever it is, as long as they make it make sense. But what would be great is that it's someone that we have not seen yet, but still makes so much sense once it's revealed.
Yeah,
I love that about this show. There's so much mystery, and not like J.J. Abrams type. Not to shit on J.J. Abrams, but the J.J. Abrams type mystery. But this is something that's it keeps you guessing,
and that's good storytelling.
Yeah,
100%, 100%. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, and I want to go back to Vernestra if we can.
Sure.
If you've read Temptation of the Force, we're on the right track with this character. You have to remember, she matured very early. She was this prodigy teenager. She, made it through the ranks, became a Jedi Knight at 15. 15.
She's like,
let that
Doogie
register. Howser. And then you're right. Right. But she's always been very, I would never call her like Luke, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. She was never that type of Jedi. She was very serious. And she still is very serious, but she's seen a lot of things early on. And when I knew it would come out, she don't like the secrets. Temptation of Force has been out since the 11th. So I'm going to speak freely. If you haven't read, whatever, sorry. Just going there.
Get there.
I don't care. Yeah. So here's the thing. She approaches Elzar and she tells Elzar Man, because he was obviously very good friends with her master before he passed away on Starlight Beacon. Not happy. Anyway, she tells Elzar, you're going to tell the Order, the Council, what you did on Starlight Beacon, or I'm going to tell them. Very similar to May. Of course, she didn't threaten death. She just said, you're going to tell them or I'm going to tell them. So he does tell them what he did, which was horrific. But, they're okay with it for some reason. Still offer him a seat on the council.
How far into the book is that? Because I'm still...
Sorry.
It's okay.
I had a very long, in-depth conversation with Tessa today about that. About my feelings, about my poor Anakin not being treated as near as justly as Elzar. But anyway, different time. But anyway, Vern does give him that ultimatum that he has to tell them. Which I think is, again, this goes to show you, she's not happy with Soul, which goes 16 years. Like, dude, you had 16 years to come clean and tell me. She didn't like that.
Yeah.
Tell her what's up, man.
But it's
But
interesting because
now it's quite heavy.
clearly the Jedi are comfortable with, at this point anyway, comfortable with kind of like, all right, let's just kind of keep that to us at this moment. And that's why, so let's why don't we take a real quick break? When we come back, I do want to talk about the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi thing, and I don't care about his age. All right, let's throw that out the window, because I think having him in the show makes a huge impact on Star Wars as we know it, and I think it's really important. So we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation about the Acolyte through episode 4. If you haven't seen him, we're in spoiler territory, folks. We're going all in. So we'll be back in just a minute with more ATG Live. Well, welcome back to ATG Live, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. Normally, you'd expect to see me on one side and Nick Milkey on the other, but Nick is he's in the woods of Alabama right now, and I know he's watching because I've seen him in the chat. So he's got internet access, but he's not with us. But I'm joined by two really great friends, two of my favorite people in the fandom, people I love hanging out with. Becca Benjamin from Tarkin Top Shelf and Chris Ryons from Broaxium. Great to see you guys. We are taking a deep dive into the Acolyte. If you haven't seen it, I got to warn you, we're going all in on spoilers here. We're talking about it. And look, I figure if you're watching a Star Wars live stream on a Thursday night, you probably were watching Acolyte on Tuesday, so I'll be fine with it. I have to give you the latest review. So 2 weeks ago, not this past week, but the week before, with the episode 3 with the flashback. Sitting with my 11-year-old son, my dad always says that the litmus test for a Star Wars show is my son Jack, because he's us when we were kids, right? He didn't like Andor. He couldn't get into it, and I understand the pace was a heavy pace. I get it. He also doesn't watch Rise of The Last Jedi that much either. It's a great movie, but it's heavier. Anyway, so the episode ends, episode 3, the one that started the social media deluge. And my son says, as soon as it ends, he goes, well, that was stupid. I was like, oh no. He's been poisoned. I said, why? Why do you think it was stupid? And he goes, because I have to wait till next week. I was like, okay, good, excellent. And this week, at the end of the episode, with the amazing arrival of the masked stranger, as soon as it ended, he goes, oh, run that again. And we went back and we watched 10 minutes, that whole last 5 to 10 minutes, because it was so well done. So the good news is it's hitting that age group. They're able to, he's able to follow the story. Again, he's probably not picking up all the political stuff. He may be, I don't know, but he's certainly enjoying the story. And his comment on May was very interesting and not, I feel it was a little bit unintentional, but it was really interesting. He said, the reason I love this show is because the main character has a second side. He didn't say that she's two people. He said she's got a second side, which I thought was a really interesting observation. And who knows? We don't know where the show's going. We so anyway, it's working for many people. It's not working for assholes who are making money grifting. But
how is this show digested so well by an 11-year-old, but not these full-blown ass adults?
Good parenting.
I know it's good parenting. Let's not go.
Sorry.
No, it's no, it's true. It's true.
Someone's gonna come at me for all this. I know
it'll happen at some point. Becca, you play very wise. You're sort of in the outer rim territories of social media. You're very smart. But let's talk about this show. Let's talk about one of the big things that was a big blow up this week, which actually led to some of the ugliest Star Wars stuff I've ever seen on social media. We may or may not talk about that because we want to stay positive. But let me just reiterate, never is it okay to send death threats to anybody for any reason, much less about a Star Wars. Period. End of story. We'll deal with that another time. If you don't know what's going on there, you're probably lucky. Becca, I loved your little note in our DM this morning. You're like, what did I miss? And then I typed it out to you, and I was like, this feels ridiculous to even have to write out. But that's where we are. But let's talk about the cameo. And it's funny because there was a there was some article somewhere that said this will be the first Star Wars television show that doesn't rely on the cameo of the week. Well, we got a cameo this week, and I think all of us, when we watched it, we were like, is that Ki-Adi-Mundi? Is that him? And then of course the credits confirmed it. Now the big thing people are saying is that there's no way, and by people I mean people who are trying to find a problem with the show and missing the subtext and missing media literacy, which is a phrase I hate, but in this case it's completely applicable. It is very possible. First of all, it's important to know. They're saying because Ki-Adi-Mundi had the very famous line, "That's impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennia." Right? Yeah. He said that in the Phantom Menace when Qui-Gon went before the council and said, "I think it's a Sith." First thing that's important to note: nowhere has it been mentioned as a Sith yet, because Ki-Adi-Mundi said it could be what do they call it, a splinter cell or something like something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Second of all, if Ki-Adi-Mundi stays close to this and it turns out it is a Sith, it changes that line forever in the Phantom Menace. He's just sitting there in his Ki-Adi-Mundi pose, like, can't be the Sith. Never saw him, never heard of him, which plays into that hubris, which is what makes The Last Jedi such a great movie. Guys, what's your thoughts on Ki-Adi-Mundi in this episode and the ridiculous argument that we've seen out there?
You go first, Becca.
Okay, thanks. Spotlight's on me. So once it all registered and I realized it was him, I actually shook my head. I was like, okay, this makes sense. This is good. For me, again, I can only tell you what I'm seeing, how I interpret it. This is to drive home the message in Attack of the Clones in the corridor. It's Yoda. It's Mace Windu and it's Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is complaining about Anakin, how arrogant he's become. And Yoda does the whole spiel. How flawed even the older Jedi have become, arrogant, too full of themselves, too sure of themselves. This is to drive that message home. So you hear this one now in the Acolyte. Then when you replay it, it's going to like, that's to me what this is. It's solidifying that message.
Yep. It's interesting because watching The Phantom Menace in theaters again back on May 3rd, when Nick came up, I got to see it with Brian Fennessy, one of our friends here in the chat as well. There was a line that struck me differently when I saw it then, and that was when Qui-Gon Jinn said, well, I didn't actually come here to free slaves, which is really interesting because you think about the Jedi, like, and he didn't, but maybe he should since he sees it happening kind of thing. And now, next time I watch Phantom Menace, I'm going to wait till after the Acolyte's over because I want to see where it goes. But Ki-Adi-Mundi saying, yeah, the Jedi have been extinct is pure arrogance. It's more arrogant than anything Yoda might have said, right? So I don't know, Chris, how did seeing Ki-Adi-Mundi strike you, and what's your thoughts on this sort of quote unquote debate?
At first, like I'm watching, I'm like, is that supposed to be? You know, and like I'm not a big EU reader, so that age or whatever that he was in Legends in the EU, well, it doesn't matter anymore because it's not canon.
Right.
So like he can, they can, maybe the Syrians can live longer than than other bipeds or other humans or whatever. Cool. What I got from this, as far as the Sith go and all that stuff, in that line from episode 1, is me. First, I'm still on the train that that's not a Sith that we're seeing. So he's still right in that aspect. The other thing is, since I do not trust Jedi scum, there's a whole lot of cover-ups going on. So, I think here's what I think. Him and that other Jedi who was with him, Holden, I think. I think their lives were saved not being put on that mission. I got this feeling. I got to stop trying to predict these endings and whatnot. I really, it never works out for me, But I think we're about to get a Rogue One type ending.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's surviving this thing. But because that keeps, except for maybe for Nestor, maybe. But because if it is a Sith, this whole thing's getting covered up. Just like whatever happened with those 4 Jedi on Brendok has been covered up to an extent. So that's where I think this is going.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think it's that really weird sort of fine line until we know what really happened on Brendok. Again, people who are pissed off because, well, how did you burn bricks? If you watch the episode, it wasn't the bricks burning that killed everybody, because there's a lot of dead bodies and none of them are burned. This is a enormous cover up. This is I
think it's poison anyway.
I think so too. I think it's exactly what May gave Torben in the second episode, right? So
100%.
I agree 100%. And also interesting was Mother Coral was not there. She was not seen. Nope. So she could be in there as well. Becca, you have a thought on this? I could tell you're
well, I have a lot. I did get some responses on Threads, which really surprised me, because some were great. Some really came at me about that whole witch episode, which I just love. I mean, really we're cool. So close to having a full-blown woman society. Sorry, anyone out there, but it was great for me. I was loving it. I love everything about that. And what people have to understand is what Leslie did here. She really connected things that we've already known that have been in Star Wars lore since, like, I don't know, when was the witch in the Ewok?
Yeah, you're right. 1980.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the books, there was stuff of witches and different factions of witches in there. So it's been going on for a while, but she brought in a real world sensibility to it. If you go in our own history of witches and lore, a coven of witches is all women. There are no men. They have they have no need for men. That's the whole point. It's a witch coven. Whatever. And there's been, back in the day, they were, burned, drowned, see if they float, based on their difference, because they were different. They would have these, they would grow herbs and they were healers. But because they were different and they were outspoken and they were wise women, you can't be right. You must be a witch. This is it. They have their own beliefs, and they're trying to keep that, and not be run out from wherever they go. That's why they're on Brendok, right? And they created life, or Mother Anastasia did. But this is not something new in Star Wars. Bug, if you've read the short story, Falta created her own daughter, Yenna, from clay and shells and other things on Dathomir.
Well, and I think it's not, and I think angry fans want to say that it diminishes Anakin's role, and I have 2 very important thoughts on that. One, there's a big difference between using the Force to create life and the Force creating life to find balance, right? That's a very different thing. But more importantly, and I think I keep going back to this, we don't know if the prophecy is even real. Again, this is the Jedi the Jedi created the prophecy, and like, well, one day there's going to be a chosen one that's going to balance the Force, because that's all told from the Jedi point of view. So we don't even know what that's all about. And again, we still don't know the Shmi story. A lot of people try to point to the comic books, but Matt Martin himself had said that the Sith and the Jedi are unreliable narratives, right? And that's really important.
Well, E.K. Johnson did a whole little interlude on how that came to be. The Force called to Shmi, therefore she is actually the original chosen one. And she opened up her arms to the stars and said yes and welcomed it. She knew she couldn't hear words, but it was like a hymn. It was like music. And she knew it was offering her someone to love for at least a minimal amount of time. And she said yes, because she had nobody. She was already stripped from her family, sold into slavery. This was her way to have love. And she knew it was limited. And sure enough, it was. She'd had dreams too. She was able to fix things just like Anakin, which makes me wonder how strong was she with Force sensitivity, because watching The Phantom Menace now, after everything we've had in books and comics and other stories, like there's something different about Shmi too, and I want that story.
Yeah.
But I could go on with that. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Matt Martin did say what we think isn't exactly what is real in that galaxy. So we don't really know what happened according to that. And that's canon, so that's how that happened from Shmi's perspective. So,
and I think it's also important. So let me ask you guys this, because this is a very interesting thing that is happening. Is we are, so I think what's his name, James Bainey, who used to be on the Resistance broadcast, John Hoey, Lacey Gillerin, but James Bainey used to say, and he was such a great dude to be he was on my show very early on, which was really great. He said a lot of people like to call things retconning. I call it just filling in the gaps. And I love that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be George doing that. It doesn't have to come from George Lucas. But we are now getting these sort of different looks at the stories. Do you think people have a problem with that? Do you think that's hard for people to manage, this sort of concept that, these are stories I've known for, gosh, I've been a Star Wars fan since '77. I saw it in the theaters when I was 7 years old. These stories have been with me for almost 50 years, right? But do you think people have a difficult time saying, like, having any change to that? Because to me, I love it. I love that. Oh, geez, I've been looking at it this way for 50 years, and it's not actually, but this is a way to look at it.
Right.
Do you think that's part of the problem?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. People, they hold on to different things and they can't, as the Jedi say, let go. They can't. Like as soon as I learned, like, all right, for example, I thought, I was a kid, stupid, but I thought that anyone who's a Force user is a Jedi.
Right.
I didn't realize it was a distinct religion. Once I learned that, like thanks to like the prequels and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, that easy.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, that's that. Cool. Oh, Ki-Adi-Mundi is well over 100 years old. Cool.
Okay.
All right, so that's what that is. Gotcha. Yep. All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why some people just they hold on to certain things that they can't let go, or like it says, it's kind of drifting, and they want to have something to argue about online, and fans.
Yeah. Well, and it's very, and that's what I try to wrestle with. And yesterday, I was very fortunate. Jordan from Wikipedia invited me to be with him on one of those Twitter Spaces. And we talked a little bit about some of the ridiculousness that is happening in the fandom right now. We talked a little bit about, literal death threats. And I see some friends of mine in the chat here on the screen that they've sent me copies of what they've gotten. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous over a show. But I think what's important to keep in mind, and we talk a lot about how, these are fans that are really angry. These are angry fans. And the perspective that I've started to take on this is that these are not fans. They call those of us that love this new stuff. And again, I don't love all of it. You guys have heard me talk about Rise of Skywalker. I got some serious issues with
Really?
that movie. Yeah, I know it's weird.
Oh.
But we have a whole video series of that if you want to look in our YouTube
wow,
channel.
yes.
But I never will go after because I know there are people that love Rise of Skywalker. That's their favorite Star Wars movie. That's amazing to me. That's fantastic. But as I look at this, they say that people who like the Disney era of Star Wars are not Star Wars fans.
Shut up.
Yeah, exactly. And the
You've had to
people
just
who
come out like that.
it happens sometimes. Chris, we still have this.
I love it.
But these people are not Star Wars fans. These people are bigots, racists, misogynists, people who are very angry about something and have chosen Star Wars as their outlet, as their latest tool. And this is it's a challenge for me because I want to say ignore them. Anybody who follows me on Twitter at ATGcast knows I don't, because I also think it's important to call them out.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share this little story with you guys and get your thoughts on it. So I've talked about him before, but my chiropractor is a huge Star Wars fan. So whenever I go in, we talk Star Wars. And I went in today and he said, "So have you watched The Acolyte?" I said, "Yeah, I really like it." And he said, "I haven't watched it yet." I said, "Oh, really? Why not?" He goes, I heard it's like, it's overly PC. I heard that it's not very good. I heard the story isn't great. And I was like, listen, you're 4 weeks in. You haven't watched it yet. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Wait until all the episodes are done. Because he's not one of us, right? Who's going to like get up at 3 a.m. when they were on at midnight and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
Wait till it's done. Wait till it's all there. And then watch it. Because as I told you in the parking lot after we watched the first 2 episodes, this is the first Star Wars series that I wish had been dropped all at once. Because I feel like,
oh my God,
this is one of those that, and I think it would stop a lot of the bullshit that's happening. But I was disappointed because he's been influenced by the noise to not watch this show.
Right.
And as a Star Wars fan, look, if you can if the BS bothers you, meaning the noise around it, then just wait till you're ready to watch that Star Wars. Don't let that influence your perspective on it. Excuse me. The problem is this is becoming louder and louder and louder. And so my question for you guys is, where does Lucasfilm and Disney go from here? Because right now, whether it doesn't matter that we love it, and we do. It does matter. Let me rephrase that. It matters that we love it. It matters that we think this is a really interesting story. But the noise has gotten to the point where it's actually having an influence on the average fan, which is completely unfair, of course. But how does Disney, in your opinion, address this so that Skeleton Crew doesn't bomb, so that season 2 of this doesn't bomb, so that Mando, the movie, and Ahsoka season 2 has a chance? Because right now these shows don't even get a chance. Do you guys have any thoughts on what they need to do to sort of to begin to set things right, as they said at the beginning of Force Awakens?
My approach would be criff them, and just keep going forward and just do what you do. These guys, if they feel that deeply about all the stuff and they're thinking like these are bad storylines and yada yada yada, write your own and then criff off. Sorry. Yeah, just keep going. Like one time, my brother and I were talking about all this because we've been fed up with a lot of this fan stuff for a while, and we're like, they should just stop making this stuff. That'll show them. Just stop making it. Nah. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, no, because that to them,
that's the win. Right.
You know.
So this is what my chiropractor friend said.
There's no influencing them. They're going to be that way. They're stuck in there. That's their team. You know, it's like politics. Ugh.
But they're big and loud. And that was what my friend said today. He said what they need to do is they need to sit down with these big names in social media and find out what they want. And I said, no, no, because they're not writing these stories. And this is the stories that, and as we said at the top, I mean, when in the latest interview with Filoni, he's still talking to George. He's still getting, this is still pure Star Wars.
Right.
And if you, by the way, if you like the EU and you don't like this show, you didn't like the EU, I think, right? So, Becca, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm just going to start off with George Lucas openly said his favorite episode of the Clone Wars is the droid episode. So there you go. Here's my thing. They don't have to do anything. I mean, I think Dave Filoni said it well in these recent interviews where Star Wars has to evolve. They have to keep doing different things.
Yes.
You can't tell the same story over and over and over again. That is the whole purpose why when he says, "May the Force be with you," it has to mean something. You can't just throw it in there. He's absolutely right. Because these stories have to mean something. And you can't lose sight that these stories are actually meant for children.
Yeah.
Like the average 12-year-old. That's really that's what even George
My son who loves the show, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because even like I think there was that part in that interview where Dave was even saying that his father eventually had him sit down and watch all these Kurosawa movies and they were too much for him to grapple at the time. But he said that's the whole point. Like you go back as an adult and then you like, oh, now I see where they were going with that. That's the whole thing. That's the journey of being a Star Wars fan. You get these kids in, whatever their entry point is, and they keep rewatching even the old stuff as they grow up because then they understand the bigger picture. That's the point. So I think what they're doing is right. You need to get different voices in here telling these stories because it can't be the same thing over and over again. Everybody from somewhere else or whomever has a different life experience and they can bring that into their storytelling. That's the purpose. And if people didn't already see it, Leslie and Dave were cooking Lord of the Rings in this past episode and I absolutely love it. You know, the whole journey, that was like from that. I mean, they're pulling from other things and it works. So I think they're on the right track. They're doing what they want to do. They're passionate about it. It's good storytelling. I don't want to watch the same thing over and over again.
Agreed. And I also don't think Star Wars is like, so one of the complaints today I saw, which is ridiculous because what the writer of this particular episode, again, spoiler alert, was on social media. And he said that somebody asked him why they didn't show Kelnaka's murder.
It's a
and he said because they didn't have the budget or the time or something like that. But imagine if they did, it would have ruined that moment. It would have ruined that because when Jack and my son were watching it and we see him hunched over and Jack's like, he's not alive. I was like, oh my God, you're right.
Sad.
It was so like it wouldn't serve the story. These are the same people though that wanted to see what happened after Anakin ignited his lightsaber during Order 66 with all the children, right?
No, you don't.
So you don't want to see that.
You
it's
don't want to.
More effective. Seeing Kelnaka, yes, I would love to see a Wookiee Jedi in live action doing his thing. Maybe we'll see that in season 2.
Flashbacks. We'll get flashbacks.
Flashback. Well, we know in the previews we see him attack Torben, right? So we're gonna see it. So chill out, folks. But yeah, so it's nitpicking. It's false. It's false arguments for just because they want to be angry about something. And again, as I said before, these are not Star Wars fans. These are people who are looking to create anger and aggression. You have the top 4 or 5 or 6 who've made a living. I mean, Star Wars Theory literally has tweeted that he makes 7 figures. This guy makes 7 figures online, and all he does is cultivate hate. And of course, look, that's what's making him money. He's going to keep doing it. And I would love to say I can't fault him for it because I can. It's a horrible way to make your living, but it is what it is. So I don't want to spend any more time talking about these jerks. I want to take one last quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about what you guys expect for the second half of the season. We can make our horrible and inevitably very wrong predictions. We'll take a couple minutes and do that, and then we'll close it down for the night. You are watching ATGLive. Well, welcome back to ATGLive, your live Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. We started the night talking about news, and we've spent the last 40 minutes or so really taking a deep dive into, maybe more, into the Acolyte. But you know what? I always say, if you're still talking about it, that means it's working. This is why The Last Jedi, to me, whether you like the movie or not, you're still talking about it. So something worked there, right? So, excuse me. So I'm going to, I want to watch the chat while we ask this question, because I want to bring up some of your thoughts, and I'm going to bring in Lloyd a little bit as well. But I'm going to start with you, Chris. The only real question I want to ask you at this point, and maybe if you have anything to go on beyond that, is who is behind the mask? Because I feel like Chimere is way too easy an answer, but what's your thoughts?
My first thoughts was that it's Master Indara. Why waste? Not waste. But why not have more Carrie-Anne Moss when you can? So hopefully she's playing a larger role with that. Past that, I don't know, Scar Squadron.
Scar Squadron. Too late, Chris. Too late. Sorry, buddy. Sorry. Becca, who do you think is the smiling stranger?
I love that mask. I'm sorry.
Oh my god, it is. It's like what Kylo Ren's mask. I loved Kylo's mask. Well, I didn't love it at first, to be honest. This is like, but it's got Knights of Ren written all over it too. Which let's connect those.
I still think Abeloth smile. That's what I see.
Well, yeah, somebody, yes,
yeah, yeah. Darth Pearly Whites. I don't know. But here's my thing. I don't have any thoughts of who it is specifically, but
yeah.
I know they're making the comparison. Soul already feels something's behind them. And it's funny because he's like the only one. Him and Osha both feel. Well, May felt it first because the light shift in Kelnaka's little abode there.
Right. And she says he's here.
She looks down at the ground and then looks out. And I want to, before we go there, I want you guys to think of something. And I caught it. I don't know if anyone else did, in Kelnaka's abode. When they're showing him making something and they're showing you bits and pieces, what would be like a window frame, you see little etchings, little markings of the coven, all those markings. Now I'm what's left of my ancestors of 100% being Polish. We come from Kozub. It's a village in Poland, and that's actually, the name Kozub is actually my maternal grandmother's name, and which means fire, just so you know.
It's all making sense now, Becca.
Okay. So there is a lot of ancestral stuff about Polish witches. Anyway, my grandmother and my grandfather, who were from Poland, comes from being pagan, but then it got transferred into Catholic. They would, over the thresholds, in Polish, write little prayers, and that's to ward off dark energy. Well, now he's got those little symbols around what would be like windows, like almost like thresholds, like warding off dark energy. And then it's weird because that room, then that the lighting shifts, and she looks at the ground and she looks out, May, and then you see Soul turn around. Osha senses it too. They're the only two that really sense it, because even Jackie looks at him like, "What are you doing, Soul?" Like, we're trying to arrest May here. Anyway, and you see this figure, the mask figure, levitate very gently down to the ground, which people are pointing out that looks like Dooku when he levitated in the Clone Wars microseries. Darth Vader also does that, something very similar with the stairs in Empire Strikes Back. Does something very, very similar with the cape and all that. But my mind went to witchcraft because it's very slow. Witches sometimes had the power to levitate. I don't think this is a Sith specifically that we're dealing with. I do think it's dark energy, dark forces. I do think this person is in touch with dark magic, and I'm not saying it's actually Sith. I think it's like arcane, if that makes sense. But I go back to what we saw in the training with Mother Anastasia, and she's pushing everybody, push against me, push back. What does she do? Or what does this person do? They push Osha out of way, and then they push all the Jedi. End.
Yep.
So there's something connected to those girls. Whoever this individual is connected. Because here's the thing. Chimera saying, you made a deal. You made a deal with the master. What's the deal?
Yeah.
I want to know the deal. Anakin made a deal with Palpatine. Palpatine said, I will save Padme from dying if you pledge yourself to the Sith. Okay, I will do whatever you ask. She's doing whatever they ask by killing off all these Jedi because it's a revenge tactic. But what is the deal? What was she promised?
Yeah.
And she wanted to stop that. Like, I'm sorry, Pete.
No, that's exactly where I was going. Yep.
Like when she realized that Osha was alive, she's like, I don't have to do this
that
anymore.
Changes things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, and again, so I think now I said this in a review I did the other day. I do feel like these episodes should be longer, not because I want more, but of course I do. But I would love to see a little bit more of, instead of just sort of switching on, I'm going to turn myself in. I get it. But again, we don't know the connection between May and Osha and what that means. Something may have happened at that moment where she just goes, oh, all right, I'm done.
Also in Kelnaka's, what do you call that? Yeah, it's home, whatever.
Yeah. It's a little home. Yeah.
In those etchings that were on the wall, there's also the symbol for yin and yang.
Yep.
Exactly. So I mean, and I'm like that's May and Ocean right there. Boom, boom. So
Shinobi says here, Vernestra mentioned something going on behind the scenes, a tipping of the scales, which is a reference to the Darth Plagueis novel and the reasons why the Force retaliated with Anakin Skywalker. Yeah.
Tommy with the knowledge, always. That's my guy.
Tommy's bringing it. Yeah. So I do feel like we're all saying it's Chimera, and it would be great if it was, because he was so dark. I loved episode 2. I've watched that episode twice or 3 times now, and I've watched it as if I know he's the bad guy.
Well, like
and he's great.
That's Kaiser Soze kind of thing. And I'm like,
Well, that's the thing. Like, it feels for Leslie Headland to make that so obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's very slight. Right. That could also be Mother Coral. It could be Carrie Ann Moss. So it could be anybody. So
it could be anybody. Absolutely.
And I think this is what's great about the show and why it takes so much patience is it requires us to let's watch the whole show. What did you want to pull up here?
That last one. Yes. And that is true. Yes. That's what you're talking about is the original symbol from the very first Jedi, order, the very first, and that which were the new order, which we will see that hopefully, the very origins of that, and that's what that's from, and it is yin and yang, and that's I think what they're getting at with the Acolyte symbol. It's red and it's blue, symbolizing what we know as an audience as light and dark, and it's a duality, and that's Osha and May. Maybe whatever Mother Anastasia cooked up, like you guys are saying, the Force fought back and made one of each. One more to the light, one more to the dark. But now May has shifted. She shifted. Her she says, my allegiance is with Osha.
So what happens? What if something happens with Osha now?
Yeah.
Well, I've been wondering if we're going to get like a Parent Trap type of swap.
Yeah.
Well, why do this without something?
And maybe the stranger saw something, because the stranger could have killed Osha right there, but instead he just went bip and knocked her out of the way. So maybe he's got something in mind for her, right?
Yeah.
So
and Holly's definitely right. And like, because Mark Perez was talking about this earlier, and where she's saying Renfield. Yeah, I'm thinking also like Mark Perez said worm tongue. That's what Chimera reminds him of. A prettier version of worm tongue. I will be quoting him on that. That's what he said. But he said a prettier version of worm tongue. So that all I think that's what his role is around with Renfield and a worm tongue kind of character.
Sort of setting, sort of doing the master's bidding, right? Before we get out of here, I'm going to bring in Lloyd if he's ready. I want to get his thoughts on this. We haven't heard from him. Lloyd, how are you?
I'm here.
Now you sound like Redfield.
Yeah,
So
I'm here.
what's your thoughts, Lloyd? Who do you think is the stranger in the mask?
I'm gonna hedge my bets. I'm gonna go either Indara or Kirill. I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm not gonna say one or the other. I still believe we're gonna end with Plagueis coming.
Yes.
I do,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna go with either Indara or Kirill.
Yeah. So here's
it doesn't make too much sense. Why would you put Carrie Ann Moss and all of the promotional material, other than that she's Carrie Ann Moss, okay? But
She's awesome.
why would you put her character specifically in
And
all
also-
the promotional stuff just to kill her off in the first 5 minutes? It don't add up. Okay,
And
I'm
that
not a conspiracy
the modulated voice. The
Yeah.
modulated voice. And like if you listen, and like I know there are nerds out there who will, deconstruct that and whatnot and get the real thing, like they did with Ahsoka as far as Fulcrum goes. But I'm listening to the voice and I'm like, that's a woman. That's a woman's voice.
Yeah, there's a certain pitch
just
in
through the
there where I'm like,
Yep.
like, so that's why I'm thinking it's either Indara or Kirill. And yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. It's been an exhausting week. I'm gonna be honest with you.
It's an exhausting week on social media, but I'm so glad that we have this show, and I love where it's going and what we've been seeing with it. And I think it's been a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, we made you tiny. We made you tiny, Lloyd.
All right.
But we've been chatting here for almost an hour and a half, and the chat has been crazy. Let me pull up a couple of the starred ones we have.
I grabbed as many as I could, to be fair, but
okay,
a lot of it was just kind of repeating. So I went with it.
I'll just pull them in here. We have for Finn in the new movie. I'd love to see them expand on Finn igniting a stormtrooper rebellion plot. Give me that. Give me.
Well, that's come and gone. They can't do that now.
Well, come on. Maybe something could happen.
They can still do something.
With Star Squadron,
Star Squadron could come up then. Maybe.
You know what, Lloyd?
What?
For those of you who haven't seen it, for an entire season, 2 seasons of Bad Batch, Chris was convinced 3 seasons it was going to be Scar Squadron.
I was convinced season 7 of when I first saw them. I'm like, that's Scar Squadron. Oh my god! And then nothing.
Yep.
Don't worry, Tech will come back just for you.
We had Raven with us for a little bit earlier tonight. I don't know if she's still with us, but she said the OT was 47 years ago. Things change in 47 years, and if you don't like that change, go back and watch A New Hope. It's still awesome.
Well said.
Yeah,
completely agree.
It was like Pete, that one guy when we watched Acolyte, and I had that one mouth breather like next to me and Brian, who was just like, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and I was fed up from the time he just started speaking, like before the movie started. But like as I was getting up afterwards, and he's still complaining, I was like, just watch the original trilogy over and over again, and shut the criff up.
No. Say it. Say it with your whole chest. Yeah, let it out.
But like just do that, or watch cut scenes from the Old Republic and the Knights of the Old Republic. They're good. They're good.
Oh, they're fun.
They're fantastic.
Amazing.
But when you have to start adding dialogue story into those,
they fall apart.
It changes.
I know.
So
Daniel Sparks said, I wish everyone would just learn to enjoy the movies again, like when we all first fell in love with Star Wars. And you know what? I've said this so many times. In fact, I was saying it last night on the Twitter space. Like, I love The Matrix. It's got to be one of my top 10 movies, maybe top 5, depending on the day, the first Matrix. But Matrix 2 and 3, to me, maybe some of the most disappointing follow-up movies ever made. But I'm never, ever going to tell somebody they're wrong if they love them, because I can always just watch The Matrix and be like, okay, it's over. Good. That was fun. Right. That's a fun story. Same thing there. So again, go back and watch Empire. We all love Empire. Just go watch that. You're cool.
Ad nauseum. Have fun.
I don't really care for Empire.
Oh, Lloyd, you're fired. That's
Return of the Jedi.
I use A New Hope over Empire all the time.
Okay.
Return of the Jedi.
Okay, Lloyd, what's
I'm
your
sorry,
number
I'm
one,
with
then?
Chris. Return of the Jedi is by far the superior trilogy movie.
By far?
By far. I will die on this hill.
By a country
man.
mile.
Well, hey, we have a topic for next week then.
I will put 10 toes on the ground and stand on my business when I say Return of the Jedi is better than Empire.
Oh my gosh.
I said it.
Wow.
He said it.
I said, no, that's fair. You know what?
He takes no, we need you here. All right, a couple more comments real quick. Benny Relp, one of our patrons, thanks for joining us, Benny. He says, hey, fellow nerds, nerdles, as a casual Star Wars fan, I still find it very difficult to keep the timeline straight. I think it's because I'm a very linear thinking person. And I go all the way. I remember, I think I even said it last week, Lloyd, when people were saying, so Jyn Erso, is she Rey's mother, or is she, so it is a challenge. It's a challenge but I do feel like the promotion for this show was better than anything else that we've seen. And that they said before the Empire, before the Menace, there was this, and kind of did their best to set that up. So
I think the biggest problem that Star Wars has is this continuity. And I'm not saying that as far as like lore and this whole Kiadi Mundi nonsense. I'm saying like the years that things happen in, it seems to like not stick. Like we all know that 0 BBY is when the Death Star blew up. Okay. But like if you don't know what BBY is and ABY means, you're not going to get it. But Star Wars doesn't even stick to that.
Here's what they should be doing, and they do this in the comics. They put the timeline, like at least I know with the High Republic ones, and some of the some of the different years, they put the timelines.
They do
in the comics, each issue. Yeah. And they should do that in some way with these shows at the beginning, or
maybe instead of all the helmets, they could like give us the timeline and zoom in on it or something. Right?
Leslie did. It was the first thing in the crawl. 100
years.
Absolutely. In the crawl.
So,
absolutely.
She did it, and kudos to her. Even though I was like trying to do math in my head, and I shouldn't do that. It really hurts. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. But then, here's the thing: to make that better for those like me who was trying to really figure it out, I went back and I read Leslie's original interview, and she does say 100 years before. Ready for this? She does say before they found out, the Jedi, that the Sith was already running in their Senate. So it would fit with the Phantom Menace because he became Chancellor in the Phantom Menace. So there you go. They didn't realize it. How did that slip by them? Huh.
Yeah, they didn't even know. They didn't know until Revenge of the Sith, right?
So, right. So there you go.
And I will never forget. This is why Star Wars is great. It's one of the many reasons why Star Wars is great is we all have our "I am your father" moment. Right, all of us here on the screen, it was Empire, and for my son, who loves Clone Wars, didn't really watch the movies because they were long. And at the time when he was watching Clone Wars, he was 8 or 9 years old. I mean, sitting a kid through 9 hours worth of movies is not easy to do. When the clones turned during Order 66, it crushed him. I mean, literally crushed him. I wish I was videoing it because his face was just like, oh my God. But the surprising one to me was when we were preparing for the last for the Rise of Skywalker, my daughter and I, who now is too cool for Star Wars because she's 14 and whatever.
Oh, she's flying.
Yeah, or you're right. She's like probably secretly watching it at night.
Yeah.
But when we watched the prequels and we got to Revenge of the Sith, and when it's finally revealed that Palpatine is the Sith, my daughter goes, I thought there was something wrong with that guy. And I was like, it wasn't like this whole time.
That's an awesome way to find out.
You weren't following it. You just,
that is...
but think about it from our perspective. We're like, oh, it's the same actor. Of course. It's like, there was no chance we were going to screw that one up. But
that is such a dope way to
find out.
And
I think to kind of go along with that, my final thought on it is that if you're a casual viewer and you're just kind of in it for the flashy lights and the woo-woo of a lightsaber, that's fine. That's cool. You shouldn't have to crack open a whole book called Star Wars Timelines just to figure out where this thing is taking place.
Yes.
Right.
I can see where that's coming from. But for us, when we kind of, go into more of it, we don't really dwell on that too much. We just want, to see, flashy.
But I can see where it's confusing because Rogue One is, an interesting spot. Solo, I'll never forget walking into the theater with I talk about him all the time. My neighbor across the street, who we go to see all the blockbusters on the Thursday without the kids. And I had to explain to him why Maul was there. Let me explain. because he was like, "Wait a minute, is this when?" And I was like, "All right," but it's a marketing challenge for sure.
It is.
Last comment, and then we're gonna let everybody get out of here. Podcast of Wills, aka Nick, who's not here, said very Rashomon vibes with what happened, what the Jedi think, what they know, and what May and Osha remember. Okay, last question. How many more times do you think we go back to that flashback? In the next
at least a handful. Episodes? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
4. Okay.
And I think it'll be left up to the viewer to figure out which way is really
which one's right,
full truth.
Yep.
And not just the ones we cling. Many of your what is it?
Many of the truths we cling to.
We cling to depend on your point of view. Yeah. So that's just it. Because I noticed someone in the comments said, but Soul didn't know that May survived. But really? There's something Soul isn't telling everybody, because he even tells Osha, when we get May and get back to the ship, I will explain everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that. And what he's doing with Osha is exactly what the Jedi Council did with Anakin. They used Anakin. It was not to go on record because he was close with Palpatine, to find out what Palpatine knows. He's doing the same thing because he knows May would want Osha. Because Vernestra says, well, do we have something that May wants? They're doing the same darn thing.
Well, look at it this way. I caught that the second time watching it was they've essentially made Osha a thing. They call her. Do we have something she wants?
She's an object to them. A means to
an
end.
She's I don't like them. A means to the end, and that is not fair. Right. But that's what I wanted to point out. This is not the first time, Chris. I'm looking at you. That the Jedi real quick, have split siblings.
Yeah.
Phase 2, the High Republic, the mother of the Path of the Open Hand. Her sister was chosen.
Yes.
Jedi Olivia, but not her.
Right.
So this was her revenge. You split me up from my sister. I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Soul is such a great character, though. He's very Qui-Gon.
I get Chris happy.
He's so
that's why
very.
I'm here.
He's very Qui-Gon, but wouldn't it be wild if he turns out to be the darkest of them all? Not the man behind the mask.
No, I don't. That would break so many hearts.
I don't think that's gonna happen. I say that he's Qui-Gon-esque just because he understands that the Jedi aren't 100% good.
Right.
At the very least, they're kind of in this weird gray area. He recognizes they do some pretty messed up things to achieve what they need to do to have the greater good. But I don't know. I feel like he's very pragmatic. He's not drinking the Kool-Aid and just kind of going with it. He's like, no, something ain't right here. So I feel like the flashback parts, they're told from a different perspective. And I think he recognizes that history is written by the victor, but it's not always the truth.
That's 100% right.
Right, exactly.
So
wow.
I think the flashback that's going to ultimately bring everything together is going to be his. I don't think we've seen his flashback yet.
No. Yep. I love it. Love it.
Oh.
Well, guys, we've been going on for an hour and a half, and I've loved absolutely every second of this. This has been a blast. Becca, tell people where they can find you on the social medias.
Sure. Well, it's right there under my name. Both of those places, you'll find me on all social media. Tarkin Top Shelf is at Tarkin Top Shelf. Anywhere you go to social media, along with myself, I am the same thing at URNGB. Wherever you do it, that's where I'm at. So, stop by, say hi, follow, listen to the show. We just had a great conversation with Tessa Grattan today that should go out either tomorrow or Saturday. We had a really interesting Elzar conversation, so you want to tune in for that.
She was so much fun during Podathon. She was great, so I can't wait to listen to a full hour of her. That's great. And Chris, where can we buy some Broaxium stuff from you? Well, it won't be Broaxium stuff. It'll be all the other stuff we love, but it'll come from Broaxium Outpost.
Well, you can well, right now the website is the .com, broaxiumoutpost.com is under construction. Hopefully within the next month or so, because there's a lot of work that's got to be done with that. That'll be up. So right now you can get everything through the YouTube, the eBay store. So everything's up there right now. And you can follow Broaxium Outpost all over social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Threads, Blue Sky. What else is there? We're all there. It's so much.
There's too many now.
It's just too many. There's too many of them. But we're doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're
Lloyd, where can we find you? I know you're doing some every now and then. My phone pops up with a "Hey kids, we're going live" or whatever it is. But with your Twitch, what's your Twitch so people can follow you?
So funny story. I'm not on Twitch for a while. All
right.
Well, I've been winning a lot of games in Call of Duty, and someone got really mad at that.
Yeah.
And reported my channel that I was cheating.
Whoa.
So I got hit with a 7-day suspension, and I tried appealing it, and they said, "No, tough shit. You're not getting away from that." And I was like, "But I can prove that I wasn't." And they're like, "We don't care." So I'm like, "You know what? I don't care about you." So I'm currently in limbo with that. I'm thinking of YouTube, but I haven't gone that far yet.
Well, we will
Twitter, however, I'm the same.
You can always find Angry Tasty Case for sure. And next week on ATG Cast, Nick will be back, and we're also going to have Patrick Kottner from the George Lucas Talk Show joining us. Friend of the show, funny freaking guy. I guarantee. I will be laughing. I'd never like to. It's humor subjective, so I don't want to say that's not a very good endorsement, is it? No. Join us next Thursday. We will have Patrick Kottner with us. We'll be talking George Lucas Talk Show, and inevitably we'll be taking another deep dive into the Acolyte episode 5, which I have no idea what to expect, and I freaking love that. I am so looking forward to it. So Becca, Chris, Lloyd, everybody following in the chat, on social media, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, where you were watching us. We saw some Facebookers out there as well. So there must be some senior citizens watching. Thank you all for hanging out. This has been a blast.
Damn.
Join us every week for Star Wars Positivity, trying to keep things on a positive perspective, and stick with us, and make sure to follow Chris and Becca and Lloyd, and we will see you next week. Chris, may the Force be with you.
Pull the thread.
What?
I like
The
may the
thread.
Lord be with you.
Okay, I'm just gonna do it.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.